Police?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Can I have an officer come to this address?
And your name?
My name's Darren West. I just found something in my garage. I think it's a miscarriage.
Can you be more specific? What do you mean by a miscarriage you found?
I have no idea. Just please send an officer up here.
It sounds like you may need medical.
It's been wrapped up in a plastic bag and it stinks.
Okay, what is it?
It's a little baby.
In the spring of 2014, a man named Darren West was finally coming home. After nearly 8 years in prison, he was preparing to move back into the house he had once shared with his wife and their daughters. His family came out to help. There was cleaning to do, boxes to sort. It was supposed to be a fresh start. But inside one of those boxes, wrapped, sealed, and left on a shelf in the garage, was something no one could have prepared for. And then they found another one. And another. By the time investigators finished searching that modest Utah home, they would make one of the most disturbing discoveries in the state's modern criminal history. Pleasant Grove, Utah sits at the foot of the Wasatch Mountains, about 40 miles south of Salt Lake City. It is a city of roughly 40,000 people, predominantly residential, family-oriented, and deeply rooted in the kind of quiet normalcy that most people spend their whole lives trying to build. It is not a place where things like this happen, or so people believed. Megan Huntsman had lived in Pleasant Grove for years. She was a mother, a visible, present mother raising 3 daughters on a tree-lined residential street. Neighbors later described her as someone who kept to herself, but she was there. She was at the school. She was in the neighborhood. She was, by all outward measures, an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Her husband, Darren West, had gone to federal prison in 2006 on drug-related charges. The couple had struggled with substance abuse for years, methamphetamine, primarily, and their life together had been fractured long before Darren's arrest. When he was sent away, Megan was left behind to raise their children alone, financially strained, largely isolated, without a support system that, for the most part, was not there. To understand what happened inside that house, you have to understand the context it happened in. Addiction, poverty, isolation, a woman alone in a home for nearly a decade with no meaningful intervention from any system or person around her. What no one knew, what no one could have imagined, was what else was happening inside that home during those years, and what had been happening quietly for nearly 2 decades before Darren ever set foot in prison. April 12, 2014, Darren West was on home confinement, transitioning out of a halfway house and back into civilian life. Members of his family had come to the house to help him prepare. They started in the garage. It was routine at first, organizing boxes, moving storage containers, clearing out the years of accumulated clutter that gathers in any family home. Then someone picked up a box that felt heavier than it should have. Inside, something was wrapped tightly in plastic. The smell was immediate, unmistakable. Darren called 911. When the dispatcher answered, he struggled to describe what he was looking at. He thought it might be a miscarriage of some kind. He wasn't sure. He just knew it was a baby. Officers from the Pleasant Grove Police Department arrived within minutes. Darren was visibly shaken. He told officers he had been in prison for years, that this house, this garage, belonged to him and his wife, Megan. He called Megan while police were present.
Are you able to help us understand what's going on here? It was a miscarriage.
It was like 9 years ago when we first left.
And how far into your pregnancy were you?
Like 7 months. It was born, stillborn.
Okay. How soon can you come down here?
She told them calmly that it had been a miscarriage, that she had been pregnant when Darren left in 2006, that the baby had been born stillborn, that she hadn't known what to do, and so she had kept it. It was a disturbing explanation, but it was at least an explanation. Officers asked Megan to come in. She agreed. A search warrant was obtained for the property. Investigators returned to the house, and they found a second baby. When the interrogator re-entered the room and informed Megan of what had been found, something shifted in the conversation.
We have investigators in the house right now. They found a second baby. Will you please tell me about that?
Hey, there's more. Hey, I'm sorry. I have hit every one of them, and he had to have known I was pregnant through most of them.
Okay, so how many do you think will we find in the garage?
4.
All right. Okay, just a minute.
The controlled, measured version of events she had been presenting began to fracture. She said there were more. She thought there were 4. Investigators found a 5th, then a 6th. Then, after a search that stretched across an entire afternoon, the remains of a 7th infant were located, also in the garage, also wrapped, also stored in a box. 7 children, hidden in a residential garage in a quiet Utah neighborhood, some for as long as 18 years. The investigation that followed was one of the most expansive in Pleasant Grove's history, not because the evidence was difficult to locate, but because of its sheer scope. Detectives from the Pleasant Grove Police Department worked alongside forensic investigators and eventually the FBI to process the scene and build a prosecutable case. The physical evidence was extensive. The remains of 7 infants, stored in various containers in the garage, each wrapped in materials that included plastic bags, towels, and tape. Megan was interviewed at length in the hours following the discovery. Those sessions were recorded, and over the course of several hours, the story she told evolved significantly. She started with stillbirths, a miscarriage, stress and drugs, the explanation of a woman who had been alone and overwhelmed. But as investigators pressed deeper, as each new discovery came in from the search team, the account she was offering collapsed under its own weight. She told investigators that she had delivered these babies largely alone and in secret, over a span of nearly 18 years, beginning around 1996. She said she had hidden every pregnancy, that the births had taken place inside the home, while her other children were elsewhere in the house. That afterward, she had wrapped each infant, placed them in a box, and moved on. She said she had been terrified, that she was on drugs, that she had been afraid a crying baby would be heard. When investigators asked whether the infants had been alive at birth, she admitted that most of them had been. She admitted that she had killed them. She confirmed that the others had also been killed the same way. She maintained that one of the 7 had been stillborn. The FBI was brought in to conduct forensic analysis on all physical evidence capable of preserving trace material. The results were unambiguous. Every fingerprint the FBI recovered from the scene belonged to Megan Huntsman. No evidence of any other individual's involvement was found. Darren West was investigated as a potential accomplice. After a thorough review, investigators cleared him entirely. The forensic evidence pointed exclusively to Megan. Megan was charged with 6 counts of murder, 1 for each infant whose death could be affirmatively tied to her actions. The 7th, which she maintained had been stillborn, was excluded from charges. She pleaded guilty to all 6 counts. In 2015, she was sentenced to 6 consecutive terms of 5 years to life in the Utah State Prison. Barring circumstances no one currently anticipates, Megan Huntsman will spend the rest of her life incarcerated. The facts of the Megan Huntsman case are, in a legal sense, resolved. She confessed. The physical evidence was overwhelming. She is in prison. But the deeper questions remain, and they are the questions worth sitting with. How does a person do this not once, but across nearly 2 decades? How does someone raise a family, visibly, actively, while concealing something this devastating in the same home, where those children played and slept and grew up? Researchers who study neonaticide and infanticide are careful to point out that these cases, while rare, are not as isolated as they feel. Studies have consistently found they are dramatically underreported and almost always linked to a specific cluster of conditions: profound denial, dissociation from the pregnancy, and an overwhelming fear of social consequences. What makes the Huntsman case unusual, even within this already rare category, is the repetition. Most documented cases involve a single event. Megan's case spans 18 years and 7 births. That kind of sustained concealment over that length of time is almost without precedent in the documented literature. Psychologists who have reviewed the case have pointed to the chronic, severe nature of her methamphetamine addiction as a central factor, not as an excuse, but as context. Long-term stimulant. Addiction profoundly disrupts emotional regulation and the capacity for forward-looking decision-making. It creates a kind of tunnel vision. What Megan appears to have done repeatedly was make a decision in crisis, in the immediate aftermath of a birth, alone, terrified, chemically impaired, and then bury it, literally. Her own explanation during interrogation was halting and incomplete. She said she was scared. She said she was in shock. She said she couldn't remember how many there were. Whether that represents genuine dissociation, deliberate evasion, or the effects of years of addiction on long-term, memory is something no one has definitively answered. Then there is the question of Darren. He was in prison for much of the period in question, but not all of it. And Megan, in the middle of her interrogation, made a statement that has lingered. She said he had to have known she was pregnant through most of them. And then, almost in the same breath, she insisted he never knew. Investigators cleared him, but that contradiction has never been fully explained. And then there is the question of the systems around her. Megan was not invisible. She had neighbors. Her children went to school. At various points, she had contact with social services, medical providers, and law enforcement. None of it surfaced what was happening. That is not an accusation against any individual. It is a structural observation. Addiction, poverty, isolation. A frayed social support net that left a struggling woman alone in a house for years at a time with no meaningful connection to the help that existed. None of that changes what she did. What she did was wrong. 6 children lost their lives, and she was responsible for those deaths. The law was clear on that, and she accepted that verdict. But if we only talk about Megan, only about the individual, we miss something important about how cases like this happen, and we make it easier for the conditions that produce them to go unexamined. As of the time of this video, Megan Huntsman remains incarcerated at the Utah State Prison, serving her 6 consecutive sentences. She has given no public interviews and made no further public statements since her sentencing in 2015. Darren West, fully cleared of any involvement, has remained out of the public eye. He had no prior knowledge of the deaths. He lost children he never knew he had, to a secret he was never told. The 3 daughters Megan raised, the children who lived in that house, who grew up alongside a secret stored in the garage, have also remained private. Their lives, their reckonings with what their mother did, are their own. The 7 infants were never named publicly. They were forensically examined, documented as evidence, and ultimately laid to rest. No burial records were made public. No memorial was announced. They were born. They were hidden. And for 18 years they waited in a box in a garage in Pleasant Grove, Utah, until one afternoon in April, when a man who had just come home reached for the wrong box. The Megan Huntsman case forces us to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Not just about one woman's actions, but about how much can remain hidden in plain sight, behind ordinary doors, in ordinary garages, in ordinary neighborhoods for an extraordinarily long time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. We would like to hear from you. Of all the dimensions of this case, Megan's actions, the years of concealment, Darren's return home, or the systems that never intervened, which aspect do you find most difficult to reconcile? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story raised questions for you, consider sharing it with someone you think should know about it.